is India's #1 news network, and you're watching News 9. English news as it should be.
Very good morning. You're watching News 9. This is Morning Brief at 9. I'm Karthik Malhotra. Well, a lot to unpack this Friday morning, so let's get started. First, with the big story we're tracking for you this morning. Global brokerage Bernstein asks tough questions on India's economic future in an open letter to Prime Minister Modi. Says the reform window is open now, but narrowing. That's the big story we are bringing for you this morning. Also on the show, India's External Affairs Ministry hits back at Trump's Hellhole remark, calls the comment uninformed, inappropriate and in poor taste. And summer vacation travel plans this year could get marred as aviation fuel shortage, flight cancellations and rerouting to longer flight paths lead to fewer bookings. Is the aviation sector in a crisis mode? We'll bring you that and more on this edition of Morning Brief at 9. You're watching Morning Brief at 9. First up, a quick look at all the headlines we're tracking for you this Friday morning. India slams U.S. President Donald Trump's Hellhole remark as uninformed and inappropriate, says it undermines the spirit of India-U.S. ties. Donald Trump extends the Israel-Lebanon ceasefire by 3 weeks after U.S.-led talks signals cautious hope, but warns Hezbollah remains a key challenge. But Donald Trump refuses to set timeline for ending Iran war, says, "Don't rush me," as he pushes for a great deal while asserting U.S. military can swiftly counter any escalation. The U.S. president also issues sharp military directive ordering the U.S. Navy to shoot and kill any Iranian boats found laying mines in the Strait of Hormuz. U.S. plans to invite Russian President Vladimir Putin to a G20 summit in Miami, though President Donald Trump says he doubts Putin will attend. Washington alleges Chinese entities are engaged in large-scale theft of U.S. artificial intelligence technology, vowing action to protect critical innovations. Facebook owner Meta plans to lay off around 8,000 more employees in May this year as soaring AI investment costs force U.S. big tech to tighten margins. European leaders greenlight a massive €90 billion worth of financial package for Ukraine as President Volodymyr Zelensky pushes for faster progress on EU membership. And India's auto leader Maruti Suzuki hits record 2.34 million production in FY26 with 11.6% growth. Exports surged 34% as company plans new Gujarat plant and targets 4 million units by FY31. The big story we're tracking for you this morning after U.S. President Donald Trump referred to India as a hellhole in a repost on Truth Social. India has issued a sharp and unambiguous response. New Delhi called the remark uninformed, inappropriate and in poor taste, indicating clear diplomatic discomfort over the language used. The Ministry of External Affairs spokesperson Ranthir Jaiswal said the comments do not reflect the true nature of the India-US relationship, one built over decades on mutual respect and shared strategic interests. India also pointed to a follow-up clarification by the US Embassy in New Delhi, which highlighted Trump's earlier description of India as a great country in what appeared to be an attempt to contain the fallout. The controversy was as a result of Trump's resharing an anti-immigration post targeting India and China with derogatory language. The post criticized the American Civil Liberties Union, accusing it of supporting policies that favor undocumented immigrants while also attacking the principle of birthright citizenship in the United States. Now remember, despite the sharp rhetoric, Trump has often spoken warmly about India's leadership, repeatedly calling Prime Minister Narendra Modi a great friend. including after a recent conversation between the two leaders during heightened tensions around the Iran conflict.
We have seen some reports. That is where I leave it.
Well, shifting focus to the ongoing geopolitical tension now, U.S. President Donald Trump says the fragile ceasefire between Israel and Lebanon has been extended by another 3 weeks, raising cautious hopes of easing tensions in the region. Now, speaking after the high-level meetings in Washington, Trump said both sides have agreed to continue a no-firing pause even as challenges remain on the ground. The decision comes after Trump hosted Israel's ambassador to Washington and Lebanese ambassador to the U.S. in the Oval Office for a second round of U.S.-facilitated talks, a day after Israeli strikes killed at least 5 people, including a journalist. Now, Trump also indicated he may soon host Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and Lebanese President Joseph Aoun for further discussions.
And we had a great meeting with the very high officials of Lebanon and very high officials of Israel. And we think that the president of Lebanon and the prime minister of Israel over the next couple of weeks will be coming here. They've agreed to an additional 3 weeks of, no firing, ceasefire, no more firing. Let's see. We hope that happens. It's not going to happen between them, but they do have Hezbollah to think about. And we're going to be working with Lebanon to get things straightened out in that country. I really believe it's something we can do pretty easily.
And following the announcement of the ceasefire extension, Trump said both Israel and Lebanon appear united in their stance against Hezbollah, which he described as a key sticking point in the conflict. Listen to the U.S. president again.
If you look at Hezbollah, that's where everybody seems to be united against them. So they are both very united in that way. Yeah, I think there's a very good chance of having peace. I think it should be an easy one. Relative to some of the things we're working on, it should be an easy one. But it's been so many years because nobody focused on it.
And staying with the conflict in West Asia, amid the heightened tensions, Trump has made it clear he is in no hurry to wrap up the ongoing conflict with Iran, saying he will not set any timeline for ending the war. Speaking on Thursday, Trump stressed that his priority is securing what he called a great deal rather than rushing into an agreement. Now, when asked how long he's willing to wait for a long-term peace settlement, Trump responded bluntly, "Don't rush me." He also claimed that while Iran may have modestly built up its weapons during the recent ceasefire, the U.S. military has the capability to neutralize those assets within a day if required.
Mr. President, 8 weeks that the U.S. now has been involved with Iran. You had initially said it would be 4 to 6 weeks.
Well, I hope that, but I also took a little break. I gave them a break. And remember this, I want to make the best deal. I don't want to put that kind of a timetable on it, but it'll go pretty quickly. And we'll have the strait opened up. Now, right now, we have it closed. We have total control of the strait.
On the war with Iran, how long are you willing to wait until you get a unified response?
Don't rush me, Jeff. But their Navy is gone, their Air Force is gone, their anti-aircraft is gone, all of their anti-aircraft machinery is gone. Maybe they loaded up a little bit during the 2-week hiatus, but we'll knock that out in about 1 day if they did.
Meanwhile, Trump has ruled out the use of nuclear weapons in the ongoing conflict with Iran, signaling a limit to escalation from Washington. Now, speaking at the White House, Trump said there is no need for such extreme measures, insisting the U.S. has already decimated Iran through conventional military power.
Sir, would you use a nuclear weapon against Iran? You posted on Truth Social a few weeks ago.
We don't need it. Why do I need it? Why would a stupid question like that be asked?
Why would
I use a nuclear weapon when we've totally, in a very conventional way, decimated them without it? No, I wouldn't use it. A nuclear weapon should never be allowed to be used by anybody.
And at the same time, the U.S. President has issued a sharp military directive ordering the U.S. Navy to shoot and kill any Iranian boats found laying mines in the Strait of Hormuz. He said American minesweepers are now operating at a tripled-up level to secure the critical shipping route. Now, the warning comes as tensions escalate after Iran showcased its control over the strait, releasing footage of commandos boarding a cargo vessel following the collapse of recent peace talks.
President Donald Trump on Thursday said he has ordered the U.S. Navy to, quote, shoot and kill any Iranian boats laying mines in the Strait of Hormuz. But he failed to mention other means Iran has used to block shipping, such as speedboats, missiles, and drones. Trump's Truth Social post comes after Iran flaunted its tightened grip over the strait, releasing video of its commandos storming a huge cargo ship after recent peace talks broke down. Since the U.S. and Israel launched the war, Iran has effectively blocked the strait to ships apart from its own, amid diplomatic efforts to restart peace negotiations. A senior Iranian source told Reuters on Thursday that Iran might consider attending a meeting in Pakistan, but only if the U.S. blockade is lifted and seized Iranian ships are released. Trump, meanwhile, said it was Washington that was in total control of the strait, which he described as sealed up tight until such time as Iran is able to make a deal. The U.S. blockade has not, however, halted Iran's own use of the strait, according to data analytics firm Vortexa. On Tuesday, Trump backed off threats to resume attacks on Iran as the ceasefire neared its end, but he refused to lift the blockade. There has been no formal extension of the ceasefire.
Meanwhile, Iran has signaled it still retains massive naval capability, using swarms of small, fast boats to seize 2 container ships near the Strait of Hormuz. Now, state television footage showed armed personnel boarding vessels in the strategic waterway. Remember, the move challenges claims that U.S. forces have neutralized Iran's maritime threat and highlights the growing difficulty of securing and reopening one of the world's most critical shipping lanes.
Iranian TV aired video on Thursday showing a small boat speeding through the water carrying soldiers who boarded 2 container ships in the Strait of Hormuz. Tehran's ability to use swarms of small, fast boats in the strait could undermine suggestions U.S. forces have disabled its naval threat. And this strategy reveals the challenges of reopening one of the world's most important oil export routes. On April 13th, U.S. President Donald Trump said in a social media post that, quote, Iran's navy is laying at the bottom of the sea, completely obliterated 158 ships. But he noted, quote, what we have not hit are their small number of what they call fast attack ships, because we did not consider them much of a threat. Warning, if any of these ships come anywhere close to our blockade, they will be immediately eliminated. Maritime security specialists estimate Iran had hundreds, if not thousands, of these boats before the war, often hidden in coastal tunnels, naval bases, or among civilian vessels. Such boats might carry heavy machine guns, rocket launchers, and in some cases, anti-ship missiles. They may not fare well against U.S. naval ships, but commercial vessels are usually unarmed. A senior Iranian security official told Reuters that the fast boats now serve as the, quote, backbone of Iran's naval strategy, able to deploy rapidly as part of its, quote, asymmetrical war against the enemy.
Well, Israel has sharply intensified its stance, with Defense Minister Israel Katz saying the country is awaiting a green light from the United States to resume military action against Iran. He warned that any renewed offensive would be different and deadly, even threatening to target Iran's supreme leadership.
ישראל ערוכה לחידוש המלחמה מול איראן. צה"ל ערוך בהגנה ובהתקפה ומטרות מסומנות. ממתינים לאור ירוק מארצות הברית, בראש ובראשונה כדי להשלים את חיסול שושלת חמינאי, יוזם תוכנית ההשמדה נגד ישראל, ואת מחליפי המחליפים של מנהיגות משטר הטרור האיראני. ובנוסף, להחזיר את איראן לעידן החושך והאבן.
And despite such strong warnings, senior Iranian leaders have projected a strong message of unity as regional tensions continue to rise following violence involving Israel and Iran-backed groups. Now, President Masoud Pezeshkian said there is no divide between hardliners and moderates, calling all Iranians revolutionary and urging alignment under Supreme Leader Mojtaba Khamenei. Now, Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi echoed the sentiment, saying Iran's military and diplomatic efforts are operating in complete coordination, describing them as 2 fronts of the same war. Meanwhile, Parliament Speaker Mohammad Bakir Kalibaf reinforced the message, rejecting political divisions and vowing a collective response to what Iran calls external aggression. And the ongoing Iran conflict is raising serious concerns about U.S. military readiness, with officials warning that the Pentagon's rapid deployment of weapons to West Asia could weaken its ability to counter rivals like China and Russia. Now, since the war began, the U.S. has expended massive quantities of advanced munitions, around 1,100 long-range cruise missiles, over 1,000 Tomahawk missiles, and more than 1,200 Patriot interceptors, each costing over $4 million. Now, ground-based systems like the ATACMS have also been heavily used, leaving stockpiles depleted. Now, in total, the conflict is estimated to have cost between $28 billion and $35 billion. That's nearly $1 billion a day as cost for the United States. Now, to sustain operations, the Pentagon has diverted weapons from bases in Asia and Europe, raising alarms about preparedness in those regions. Now, the war has also exposed a deeper issue, that is heavy reliance on costly missiles and limited production capacity. Now, as Senator Jack Reed warned, rebuilding these stockpiles at current production rates could take years, forcing tough choices for how and where the United States maintains its global military edge. And on to secondary effects of the war in West Asia. Well, a sharp surge in jet fuel prices triggered by the US-Israel war on Iran is rattling the global aviation sector. Airlines are being forced to raise fares and reassess their financial outlook as fuel costs spike. Now, the situation is being worsened by disruptions in the Strait of Hormuz, raising concerns of further travel disruptions this summer travel season.
A surge in jet fuel prices driven by the US-Israeli war on Iran has upended the global aviation industry. It's forced airlines to raise fares and revise their financial outlooks. With jet fuel shortages expected, how will travel be disrupted this summer? Continued restrictions on trade through the Strait of Hormuz plays a big part. It carried about 20% of daily global oil supplies until the war began on February 28th. Jet fuel prices have soared from a range of $85 to $90 per barrel up to between $150 to $200 per barrel in recent weeks. While US President Donald Trump extended a ceasefire, Iran and the US are still restricting transit of ships through the strait.
We still need to then deal with the
global tourism and aviation expert Anita Mendarata told Reuters supply constraints will take time to unwind.
The supply chains that need to be reactivated once the strait is opened up again, and then again moving through the refining and distribution of jet fuel to get to international airports and into the airlines. So this is going to take us without question into the summer.
Mendarata said that European airlines could feel the hit soon. German company Lufthansa Group has already said 20,000 short-haul flights would be removed from its schedule through October. Europe's largest tour operator, TUI, cut its underlying operating profit forecast and suspended its revenue guidance, citing uncertainty. Airlines EasyJet and Wizz Air have also warned of the negative impact of the conflict. Mendarata says airlines won't want to cancel flights, but they will have to decide whether to send jets into regions where refueling may be too expensive.
So they're looking at it from that perspective as wisely as possible, and then redeploying their schedules to be able to marry to demand and yet recognize the importance of jet fuel supply.
A European Union spokesperson told Reuters the EU is prepared to coordinate a release of jet fuel stocks if disruption persists. Even after military action ends, the jet fuel shortages and travel confidence will not be fixed immediately.
Because even if everything is fine from the point of view of supply chains, airlines are able to absorb back the jet fuel they require. Are travelers confident going back to those original travel routes? So it is going to take some time.
And with that, we will slip into a very short break. But when we come back, we discuss an open letter written to the Prime Minister of India by Bernstein, the global brokerage, asking some tough questions about India's reform priorities. We'll discuss that on the other side of the break. You're watching Morning Brief at 9.
गर्मी स्क्वाड, हम गर्मी का आतंक मचाने आए हैं। ओए, फ्रीज।
Blue Star, AC on. Fast cooling 5-star ACs with voice command technology. Blue Star, गर्मी की छुट्टी। अरे, फ्रीज तो आप हो गए।
Bhaskar, our first order. Help us build the chutney business from label to website.
After a blockbuster first season, where corporate giants and industry leaders ruled the court, TV9 Network presents the ultimate corporate badminton championship Season 2. A battle of skill, speed and supremacy, with a massive 5 lakh rupee prize pool across categories. At Pulela Gopichand Badminton Academy, Gachibowli, Hyderabad, from the 15th to the 17th May 2026. The court is set. Let the battles begin. Catch the action only on TV9 Network. To register, log on to www.tv9x.com.
Associate sponsor KL deemed to be university. Special partners Campa Sure, Shukar hai, Sure hai. Venue partner Pulela Gopichand Badminton Academy.
Welcome back. You're watching News 9. This is Morning Brief at 9. Let's move on now to other stories we're tracking for you related to the conflict in West Asia, particularly about India. Now, the Embassy of India in Tehran has issued a fresh advisory urging Indian citizens to avoid traveling to Iran and advising those already there to leave at the earliest, citing the ongoing regional tensions. Now, the warning comes even as limited flight operations resume between India and Iran, with officials highlighting continued airspace restrictions and operational uncertainties. Now, the advisory underscores growing concerns over the volatile security situation in West Asia, which continues to disrupt international travel and aviation routes. Meanwhile, supply chain and fuel disruptions from the West Asia conflict are hitting many Indian factories. But cotton yarn makers like Fiotex Cotspin are seeing a surge in demand. Now, the company is ramping up production as Chinese buyers turn to India amid tight domestic cotton supply and shipment delays from the US and Brazil. Now, a weaker rupee against the yuan has also made Indian yarn more competitive, creating an unexpected opportunity for exporters even as broader industrial activity faces pressure.
The war in Iran has disrupted supply chains and fuel availability, hurting many Indian factories. But that is not the case for cotton yarn makers like Fiotex Cotspin. The company is ramping up production due to growing demand from China. That's as China faces tight domestic cotton supply and delays in shipments from the US and Brazil. Additionally, a weakened rupee against the Chinese yuan this year has made yarn more affordable. Ripple Patel is the managing director of Fiotex Cotspin in Gujarat.
So we had orders say about for another 65 to maybe probably 75 days, and the price realization is good, and hopefully we'll be receiving this kind of order in near future also. So our exports is almost 50% exports, and the rest 50% we are catering to our domestic market.
China's National Textile and Apparel Council declined to comment on the rising yarn imports from India. While many Indian factories are struggling with gas shortages and higher costs of plastics and spare parts, cotton spinning mills have been largely unaffected as they mostly run on grid or solar power. Mills in Gujarat are benefiting the most because they are close to cotton growing areas and major ports.
All right, and with that, we will slip into another very short break. A lot more coming up on the other side of the break. We will get you a mood check on the stock markets and, of course, the Bernstein open letter to Prime Minister Modi, posing tough questions about India's economic priorities.
कहीं एक नई रोड ने साइंस को शहर से गांव तक पहुंचाया, ताकि पूर्णी चांद तक पहुंचने का सपना देख पाए। देश के नंबर 1 सीमेंट अल्ट्राटेक में हम मानते हैं, बनेगा तो बढ़ेगा इंडिया।
Others see a teenage tantrum. I see you standing your ground. I see you, my daughter, 16 and already owning your story. And I couldn't be more proud. For you, only natural diamonds.
Water overflowing, what could it be?
Welcome back. You are watching Morning Brief at 9 right here on News 9. Time now to take a deep dive into stock markets from around the world. Let's first begin with the United States. Well, U.S. markets slipped in volatile trading on Thursday as geopolitics and tech concerns weigh on sentiment. Now, stocks closed lower with investors pulling back as hopes faded for a quick end to the Iran conflict. But at the same time, a mixed batch of corporate earnings failed to provide clear direction to investors. The bigger drag came from the tech sector, especially software stocks, where fresh concerns are emerging over how artificial intelligence could disrupt traditional business models. Take a look.
Wall Street's main indexes closed lower on Thursday, with the Dow dipping more than 0.33%, the S&P 500 shedding about 0.4%, and the tech-heavy Nasdaq dropping roughly 0.9%. Hopes dimmed for a quick end to the Middle East conflict after reports that Iran's parliament speaker had resigned from the negotiating team. Losses were extended as oil prices shot higher after reports of air attacks in Iran. Dean Smith is chief strategist and portfolio manager at Folio Beyond.
It's very difficult to judge on a day-to-day and certainly hour-to-hour and tweet-by-tweet basis how this is going to play out. And really, investors should mostly not try to do that. The situation in the energy markets and the global economy is pretty serious, and it's going to take quite a while to resolve. So people who are looking for a really quick resolution and trying to trade on these headlines are making a mistake.
Meanwhile, investors grappled with a mixed bag of earnings reports as concerns resurfaced about AI-driven disruption across the software sector. Shares of ServiceNow slumped nearly 18% after the software company said revenue growth was dented by delays in closing government deals in the Middle East. The stock's decline contributed to a more than 5% slide for the S&P 500 Software and Services Index, its biggest daily percentage drop since January 29th. Elsewhere in the market, shares of car rental company Avis Budget plummeted more than 48%, days after a short squeeze sent the stock on a meteoric rally reminiscent of the meme stock craze. On the flip side, shares of Texas Instruments surged more than 19% for their biggest daily jump since October 2000, after the company forecast second quarter revenue and profit above Wall Street expectations.
And the mixed sentiment on Wall Street also reflecting in a mixed knock-on effect on Asian indices this morning. If you pull up the charts, you'll see it's a red, green, red streak visible, with the Hong Kong's index, key benchmark index, Hang Seng, down about 0.4% at levels of about 25,800. Meanwhile, Nikkei and Taiwan, in fact, Nikkei, Japan's benchmark, is up in trade, but the biggest gain seems to be coming from Taiwan's TAIEX, which is up about 2.5 percentage points this morning. Kospi, the South Korean benchmark, and the Shanghai Composite Index both in the red this morning. Meanwhile, the Indian market's not really in a great mood in the fourth quarter earnings season, with IT stocks weighing down the market sentiment day after day. In fact, today seems to be the third day of losses on the Indian indices. The Sensex, which was hoping to reach the 80,000 levels at the start of the week. Well, those hopes have been washed away, with the benchmark now down at about 77,350 odd levels. Meanwhile, Nifty 50 also opening weaker this morning at levels just a little over 24,000. In better news, volatility in the Indian stock markets has ebbed comfortably below that 20 level, although it's slightly up in this morning. Meanwhile, let's look at the Nifty 50 heat map and look at some of the stocks and the sectors which seem to be performing and not really performing this morning. The heavyweight Reliance Industries, all set to announce its Q4 earnings result, is in the red this morning. Some profit booking potentially ahead of the result announcement this afternoon. Meanwhile, the IT sector completely dismayed by what the Q4 earnings have shown. And this also reaffirms the fact that Infosys, despite reporting an over 20% year-on-year growth in net profit and a reduced headcount, is down about 2.5% or so in trade this morning. Let's introduce our guest on the show this morning. Kranti Batini, equity strategist at Wealth Mill Securities, joins me this morning. Kranti, good morning. A lot to sort of, discuss in the market mood, but I think two big drivers seem to be oil prices, which are back to levels above $105 a barrel. And then, of course, the sentiment, the weak sentiment on the commentary which the IT majors are giving out for growth forecast for FY27. What do you make of these two events?
Karthik, you're absolutely correct. The Brent is above $105 per barrel, which was giving a comfortable range for Indian markets in the last 10 days of the trade. We are not sure how these supply chains are moving at this point of time. We have a ceasefire announcement and also that's getting continued. But as there is no concrete statement, bilateral statement in terms of the Middle East peace is concerned, still it's lingering. That's where the impact we are witnessing on the crude oil prices at this point of time. If the crude oil prices are inching from here, if they are trending above $100 per barrel, it's definitely going to have a direct impact on Indian economy in the medium to short term. So we need to have a cool off of crude oil in the coming days and weeks. That is extremely crucial for the Indian economy. And we have witnessed when the crude, whenever it cools off, we witnessed a fabulous rally and recovery and a broad-based strength the market have witnessed. Even the past week, we went to the range of Nifty 24,500. From there onwards, it has given up the 500 points on Nifty around. We need to look forward for around 24,000 levels of the Nifty now. And the earnings season, as you rightly mentioned, there are no negative surprises at the same point of time. At the same point of time, there are no positives at this point of time. The earnings season has been leading as IT pack, IT companies, large cap IT companies especially, they could not able to entice the market as we are in the change of atmosphere at this point of time in terms of the IT is concerned. The Indian IT majors especially, they have been relying on per employee revenue. Now the narrative has changed in the global space at this point of time. Right now, the Meta has announced the employee cuts, reducing their headcounts at a very drastic pace. And Indian IT companies have been relied on the per employee revenue. Now, this is the season completely changed the narrative. So the IT majors have to retweak their business models. Of course, they have been doing that retweaking of the business models. AI systems and business models are concerned. It will take some time to yield the results for these IT majors in the coming coming quarters.
Right.
That's where the overhang for the IT companies at this point of time.
Of course, a massive overhang visible. And let's talk actually about, Infosys particularly, because it reported a 21% growth in net profit year on year to, to about 8,500 crore rupees. And this is coming despite a headcount reduction of about 8,400 employees in the financial year gone by. So But I think what is really spooking, like you've also mentioned, Kranti, is the long-term projection and the sort of guidance which the management is giving for the year ahead. But overall, what do you make of the sort of AI narrative? How's that really playing out? Because you've seen a headcount reduction, which is something that investors would often celebrate, even though there are job losses. It reduces cost. At the same time, you're seeing a growth in profit. So overall, how's the AI story really playing out?
Karthik, you made a very valid point. In terms of the positioning of the Indian IT companies has been, we always look forward as the companies have been in the service industries. Headcount makes a key important role for the revenues of the IT companies. So whenever there is a reduction in the headcounts, as you rightly mentioned, there is some kind of a cost component. But at this point of time, where is the growth component? That's where the missing part at this point of time. So the AI is the important tool at this point of time. How the existing teams are going to be, the human resource is going to be adaptable in terms of the AI is concerned. Of course, Infosys also announced an announcement that they're tying up with OpenAI in terms of the AI source is concerned. That's a welcoming move, but these are all going to take time to manifest in terms of the revenues and profits are concerned. And the other side of the coin, how the US growth is going to be, because by and large, these IT companies are going to derive their revenues from US growth. Right. And there is a lingering impact of US growth. So all these points put together, we are witnessing the stock consolidation and reduction of the stock prices in the medium to short term.
All right, and now let's move on from the tech sector to the energy behemoth, Reliance Industries, because investors are awaiting those Q4 earnings today. In fact, this afternoon, this evening, we will hear from the Reliance leadership on the Q4 earnings, on the yearly earnings, and of course, hopes are high on some announcement on the Jio IPO as well. Kranti, what are you expecting from Reliance Industries Q4 earnings today?
By and large, it's going to be a positive quarter for Reliance Industries is concerned, Karthik. That's what I'm expecting, we are expecting. And as you rightly mentioned, the Jio IPO announcement also around the corner. By and large, the sum of the parts business is concerned, the retail, the digital, and the petrochemical businesses are going to lead Reliance Industries. And petrochemical business is the pocket we need to look forward how, because of the volatility in the crude oil prices, how the refining margins, GRMs, gas refining margins are concerned. By and large, it's going to be a positive quarter for Reliance Industries is concerned.
A positive quarter for Reliance Industries, and we really don't know if that all big announcement of a Jio IPO really comes through. Expectations, of course, continue to run high. Well, we leave it at that as far as the stock markets are concerned, but do stay with us, Kranti, as there's another important story that we are following, and this one really comes from a global brokerage firm. That's right. Global brokerage Bernstein has written a letter to Prime Minister Narendra Modi warning that India could squander its recent economic gains unless it pushes harder on structural reforms. Now, the note says while the last 6 years proved what aligned policy can achieve with stronger macro stability, rising earnings and a capex-led growth push, the danger now is what Bernstein calls complacency. Now, Bernstein argues India risks becoming a passive consumer in the AI economy as generative AI threatens millions of IT and BPO jobs, while most value creation remains concentrated in the United States and China. The global brokerage also questions whether manufacturing is strong enough to absorb displaced labor, pointing out that despite PLI schemes and China Plus One hopes, manufacturing still remains stuck in second gear, around 16 to 17% of India's GDP, with heavy import dependence in critical areas like EV batteries. Now, Bernstein also flags agriculture as another drag, where nearly 42 to 45% of the workforce contributes just 15 to 16% of GDP, calling subsidies and loan waivers recurring responses rather than real reform. Now, Bernstein further raises concerns over rising welfare spending, warning that large-scale cash transfers could crowd out productive capital expenditure, while underinvestment in rail, mass transit and R&D could weaken India's long-term competitiveness. Now, with R&D spending still just 0.6 to 0.7% of GDP, the firm says India risks under-delivering on its potential unless it takes tougher decisions sooner rather than later. Now, Bernstein's message in that open letter to the Prime Minister of India is pretty blunt. The window to act is still open, but it is narrowing. Well, Kranti Patini continues to be with me on this macroeconomic story. Kranti, the window is open but narrowing, and structural reforms need to harden this in the coming future. How convinced are you of the questions that Bernstein is raising on India's growth potential going forward?
Karthik, it's very interesting, and Bernstein have come up with an open letter to the Prime Minister office and to the Prime Minister. These are the early warnings, of course, they're giving, but we have a much capable team at the PMO at this point of time to drive the growth reforms. But sometimes the growth reforms agendas get hijacked or diverted in the medium to short term. But we have a mandate for the government to double the GDP, and sometimes the external shocks like the global crude oil prices, geopolitical issues, and things like the trade tariffs do tend to create some kind of a knee-jerk reaction in the reforms agenda. But given the kind of the democratic system we have, with the large part of the population depends upon the agriculture. So sometimes it takes tend to look like the reform agenda is taking time. But by and large, we are on track, but the pace has been moving slow at this point of time. So what Bernstein tells deliberately is just to push forward the same growth agenda, but the pace has to be, should take some more fast track. That's what the summary says at this point of time, Karthik.
All right, Kranti Patini, let's leave it at that. Push the pedal on the reform agenda is the word coming in. Thank you so much, Kranti. As always, pleasure having you here with us on News9.
Yes. Thank you.
And while the Indian rupee is still under strain, top policy makers are calling it an opportunity. Well, according to India's chief economic advisor, V. Anant Nageswaran, the currency is fundamentally undervalued and could attract long-term investors at current levels. Well, the rupee has slipped this week with global oil prices rising once again above the $100 a barrel mark, increasing India's import bill. It fell 0.3% to 94.11 per dollar on Thursday. Now, the currency has also given up recent gains fueled by the central bank's recent measures to curb speculative arbitrage bets and is now among Asia's worst performing currencies this year. Now, foreign investor outflows have added to the pressure with equity withdrawals at one point exceeding last year's record levels. Now, Reserve Bank of India Governor Sanjay Malhotra says growth could still approach 6.9% this financial year, even as the West Asia conflict clouds the outlook. Union Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman chaired a high-level meeting with banks and key stakeholders to address emerging cybersecurity risks linked to advanced artificial intelligence. Now, joined by IT Minister Ashwini Vaishnav, the discussion focused on the growing threat of AI being misused to exploit software vulnerabilities and target financial systems. Now, Sitharaman urged banks to take proactive steps to secure their IT infrastructure, protect customer data and safeguard financial assets. Now, while appreciating the progress made so far in strengthening cybersecurity frameworks, she cautioned that the latest AI-driven threats like Anthropic Claude Mythos are unprecedented and require heightened vigilance and coordination. She also tasked the Indian Banks Association with building a coordinated response mechanism and directed banks to engage top cybersecurity experts to enhance monitoring and defense systems. Now, institutions were further advised to promptly report any suspicious activity to agencies like the Indian Computer Emergency Response Team and maintain close coordination to tackle potential threats effectively. On to corporate stories now. Maruti Suzuki India has hit a major milestone, recording its highest ever annual production of 2.34 million passenger vehicles in FY26, marking an 11.66% jump from the previous year. The popular models like the Desire, Swift, Baleno, Ertiga and Franks each crossed the 2 lakh production mark, reflecting strong demand across segments. Now, the record comes as India's passenger vehicle market touched an all-time high of 4.7 million units, aided by a GST cut and improving demand. Maruti Suzuki also saw exports surge 34% year-on-year to 4,47,000 vehicles, underlining its growing global footprint. Now, with 4 plants currently operating across Haryana and Gujarat, the company is now planning a 5th facility in Sanand to further scale up capacity. Maruti Suzuki also aims to double production to 4 million units by the year FY31, further signaling aggressive expansion in both domestic and export markets. And from one auto leader to another, let's pivot to Mahindra & Mahindra. Well, Classic Legends Private Limited has expanded its lineup with the launch of 2 new Scrambler motorcycles in India, the Yazdi Scrambler 350 and the BSA Scrambler 650. Well, the Yazdi Scrambler 350 is being pitched as the lightest 350cc Scrambler in the country, powered by a new liquid-cooled Qatar engine, and starts at a price of a little under 2 lakh rupees with multiple color options. Meanwhile, the BSA Scrambler 650 comes with a larger 650cc single-cylinder engine and draws design inspiration from classic BSA models, positioning itself as the premium offering at a price tag of about 3,25,000 rupees. Well, the launch highlights the growing popularity of Scrambler-style bikes in India, a segment that has evolved from custom modifications to mainstream factory production motorcycles. And from wheels to the skies now, India's largest airline Indigo has received a warning from aviation regulator, the DGCA, over ticket prices charged during December 2025. The issue relates to a period when the government had imposed temporary caps on domestic airfares to prevent excessive pricing. Now, the DGCA found that some fares offered by Indigo exceeded those limits. The airline, however, says it has already refunded affected passengers and taken corrective steps to comply with the rules. Now, while the warning carries no penalties or operational impact, the regulator has directed Indigo to ensure stricter adherence to pricing norms going forward. Let's slip into another short break. We'll bring you some global stories on the other side of the break. You're watching News 9.
पता है ये लंबी सी मेट्रो लाइन क्यों बनी? सिर्फ इसलिए कि पापा जल्दी घर पर आए और ये दोनों उनकी गोदी में छलांग मार पाए। देश के नंबर 1 सीमेंट अल्ट्राटेक में हम मानते हैं, बनेगा तो बढ़ेगा इंडिया।
पढ़ता है, खेलता है, झूलता उछलता है, दौड़ता कभी कभी दौड़ कराता है, आगे आगे बढ़ता है इंडिया, अमूल दूध पीता है इंडिया।
Bhaskar, our first order. Help us build the chutney business from label to website.
Welcome back. You're watching News 9. This is Morning Brief at 9. Time now to shift our attention to global stories. Well, a major shake-up is being planned at one of the world's biggest tech companies. Meta, the parent of Facebook and Instagram, is set to cut about 10% of its workforce as it doubles down on artificial intelligence. Now, this move, this 10% cut, could impact roughly 8,000 employees, with additional hiring plans of 6,000 employees also being scrapped. Now, the layoffs are part of a broader restructuring as Meta ramps up spending on AI infrastructure, data centers, and advanced systems. Now, Meta is not alone in doing this. Across the tech industry, firms are trimming staff even as they invest heavily in artificial intelligence, raising concerns about automation replacing traditional roles. Now, for Meta, the shift signals a clear priority of leaner operations and a sharper focus on the next phase of AI. On to South Korea now. Hyundai Motor has reported a sharp 31% drop in first quarter operating profit and warned of rising business uncertainty amid global disruptions in West Asia. Now, the company says the ongoing conflict is adding pressure through higher costs, supply disruptions and weakening demand in key markets. Now, Hyundai is one of the world's largest car makers and its warning reflects broader concerns across the global auto industry.
South Korea's Hyundai warned of growing business uncertainty as it posted a drop in Q1 profit of almost a third. The automaker cited the conflict in the Middle East as the reason for its cautious outlook. That's as exports to Europe and North Africa, which typically transit through the region, are being disrupted. The warning by this auto giant underscored growing strains on the global supply chain in the industry as the conflict continues. Hyundai posted an operating profit of $1.7 billion for the January to March period, well below last year's number. The company said, along with the Iran war, US tariffs of 15% hit Q1 earnings. A rise in prices for key raw materials had an impact of about $134 million on its bottom line. Its CEO said Hyundai will not manage to fully make up for lost sales in the Middle East due to the crisis in the region. Manufacturing restraints won't allow it to quickly reallocate sales to other regions. But Hyundai did see a bright spot. Sales grew 3.4% in the first quarter, helped by robust hybrid vehicle sales. That's as the conflict has caused fuel prices to soar, and customers are turning to hybrid and electric vehicles. The automaker's shares were down in afternoon trade.
But on the other side of the globe, it's been a stronger than expected quarter for the French auto major Renault. Well, the car maker reported a 7.3% rise in first quarter sales, beating market expectations. The growth was driven by higher volumes to partners, including Japan's Nissan and Geely. Now, this helped offset a hit from production disruptions at its low-cost brand Dacia. Now, the numbers highlight how strategic partnerships are helping cushion volatility in an otherwise challenging auto market.
Renault's first quarter sales easily beat analyst expectations. The French auto giant said Thursday sales were up 7.3% from a year earlier at just under $14.7 billion. It was driven by a sharp rise in sales to partners like Nissan and China's Geely, which more than offset disruption in production seen at its low-cost Dacia brand. The uplift helped its core auto business revenue rise 6.5% to $12.6 billion. Sales of the Dacia brand fell by just over 16% during the period, while those of the Renault brand rose by 2.2%. Renault is at the start of a major sales push under new CEO Francois Provost. It aims to sell more than 2 million Renault brand vehicles a year by 2030, up close to a quarter from last year, with half of those sales outside Europe. Competition has grown for the automaker, particularly from low-cost Chinese firms rolling out new models in its core European markets. Renault said earlier this month it would cut up to a fifth of its engineering staff over the next 2 years. That as it tries to streamline operations and match lower Chinese development costs. Renault also said on Thursday it would apply more measures on raw materials, energy and logistics costs. It's to deal with the impact of the US-Israeli war on Iran. Renault shares were up just over 1% in early trade.
All right, let's move on now to some geopolitical stories we are tracking this morning in what could be read as a potential diplomatic signal from Washington on Russia. U.S. President Donald Trump on Thursday said it would be helpful if Russian President Vladimir Putin attends the upcoming G20 summit in Miami later this year, but added he doubts Putin will make the trip. There has been no official confirmation from the Kremlin on Putin's participation yet, with both the White House and the State Department declining immediate comments. Now, Trump's remarks, however, underscore a possible shift in tone as Washington weighs engagement with Moscow on the global stage.
Yeah.
There's some reports today, sir, that you intend to invite Vladimir Putin to the G20 in Miami. Is that the case?
No, but if he came, it would be probably very helpful. Okay.
So he's not coming to the G20?
Not that I know of, but...
Because there are senior administration officials being quoted in news reports this afternoon that says the Russians are being invited to at least ministerial...
Well, you're saying being invited as opposed to coming. I don't know of the invitation, but if he were invited, I don't know.
Would you like
Hey, I'm of the opinion that you talk to everybody.
And that's all we have time for on this edition of Morning Brief at 9. Thank you so much for tuning in. But news continues right here on News 9 on the other side of the break. Keep watching.
Walk down Cool Street. When you're hot, we'll cool you down on Cool Street. On Cool Street. On Cool Street. Ooh, I'm on cool. Chill your deal. I'm on cool. Chill your deal. I'm on cool. Chill your deal.
Bhaskar, our first order. Help us build the chutney business from label to website.
In Assam, the debate over infiltration is back.
এইটোৱে হৈছে বিজেপিৰ সংকল্প, এয়াই হৈছে বিজেপিৰ প্ৰতিজ্ঞা।
Will NRC settle the question of identity?
दोनों चाहते हैं कि डरा कर धमका कर इस देश की जनता पर राज करें।
Or will the fight over borders will shape this election?
From the ground, the questions that matter, the voices that shape the vote. India votes only on News 9.
What you saw me on the field and off the field.